on the cloud. I'm usually standing up, but today I am feeling under the weather. So I am going to sit the whole thing down and we're going to get through this. And it's going to be a great, great power up because we have a great speaker. So thank God it's not ever based on me. We'd all be in trouble if that was the case. So let's go ahead and start with gratitude shout outs. Any brevity wins, any success wins, really. Just find your little raise your hand button. Just take a second to think about it. Who in your organization or your team is impacting everybody else or impacting you? And we'll just grab a couple and we'll just wait until, there we go. Anthony Chambers, good morning.
Good morning. I'd like to send a shout out to my teammate, Esther Gomez. She's killing it. She has great energy. She just got 2 under contract. And she's just a hard worker and she just has amazing energy. So ultimate team player.
Wow. And Esther is new, so that's even more special. Congratulations, Esther and Anthony. That's really awesome of you to shout her out. That's awesome. Love it. Love how engaged you are. Awesome. I'm gonna take 2 more. We can't go on. Gratitude is everything, right? I know we all have it. It's just difficult to raise our hands sometimes. There you go. Hey, Sharon.
Good morning. I can't stand silence, so I will always speak up. But if you weren't able to check out the webinar yesterday with Olivia on her journey into home ownership and investing, it was really awesome. And I think that it's a great example that you don't have to be a realtor or an agent to be able to continue to build wealth. And I love that she's setting the example for operations people in our organization in a way that we all can learn from. So if you didn't see it, the information in the slide deck she did share, so I'd encourage you to take it in.
I love that. And thanks for the shout out for wealth workshops on Wednesdays. I know a lot of us say that wealth is important to us, and it is important to us, right? And then they're offered, and obviously, life happens and we miss them. The nice thing is, number 1, they're offered. Number 2, they are recorded, so you can actually go back to them. So I love that. Thanks, Sharon, for that plug. Jordan, good morning. Oh, for some reason, you're not muted, but I can't hear you. Is your sound on? Darn.
Yeah.
Oh, there you are. Yep. I gotcha.
I wanted to give a shout out to Leah, who's our director of operations. Her listing coordinator on our team is on maternity leave, and she's powering through, and we are completing week 4 of 6 without her, but she's determined to make sure that she is not bothered. And so she is just heading up the charge, and our team is amazing, has taken more listings than ever in a month this month. And so she is drowning with a smile on her face. And then also Valencia, because I know she's bringing a lot of value to place with her condensed converted. And I've gotten a lot of feedback from everybody on this, a lot of people on this call about it.
You just nailed ops in general. Drowning with a smile on their face. I know all the ops people here absolutely understand that, man. Man, that is so true. And Valencia converted has been awesome. 100% agree. Thank you for doing that. Thanks to all the ops who keep us above water, even though they might be drowning. And Valencia, thank you so much. All right, well, we will keep going here. This morning we have a guest, and we've talked about Kimberlee for a little bit. I'm going to go ahead and spotlight her just for a second. And the awesome thing is that she is not in California, so she didn't have to do a 6:30 a.m. She's in Boston, which is 9:30, right? So she's got a smile on her face more than the California and Washington people usually do about this time, because it is a normal hour for her right now. So that's always great. But as you guys know, with summer coming up, who else knows summer is coming up and is excited about summer coming up? Yes. And we also know that summer is a really great time where, man, it's easy to just fall off of our activities just because it's summertime and there's life happening and there's family happening and there's all the good stuff that's supposed to be happening. And then we wake up and then kids go back to school and we may or may not have the business that we thought we would. And then we start to struggle and all of that stuff. So we've been looking forward to maybe like making it I hate to say exciting, but maybe changing it up a little bit. So events is an area that we haven't really talked about much. And when I asked Ben, who has a superpower that I need to know about, he said, "Have you talked to Kimberlee in Boston?" And I was like, "I don't even know Kimberlee in Boston." He's like, "Oh, you need to talk to Kimberlee in Boston." So Kimberlee in Boston, welcome to our Texas group. We're excited that you're here. We're excited that Ben is excited about you. Like, how about that? Um, so tell us a little bit about you. What's your background? Like, where I know you're in Boston. That's pretty much all I know about you.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. It's nice that you guys are behind me because like my team has already had our power up this morning, so we're like geared up, ready to go. So as Adelina said, I'm Kimberlee from Boston. My name is Kimberlee Meserve. I have been in real estate for 7 years now. I actually I live in Boston now, but this is not where I started my career. So I got licensed. I bought my first house when I was 24, and I got licensed shortly after that. At the time, I was living in Southern Maine. My journey into real estate is actually a little bit weird. I went to school for fine art. I thought I was going to become a professor, get my MFA in painting. So I have a degree in painting, which is cool, but you don't make a lot of money doing that. And it also doesn't give you a lot of skills towards real estate. But I got a job after I graduated my undergrad. Thought I was going to go back, get my master's, and then life happens, right? So I bought my first house, and my agent was the one that was like, you should get your real estate license. Like, I loved the house hunting process. I was constantly like sending her properties, and the job I had, I loved the job, but I did not love my boss. So it's like, I was talking with Adelina briefly, and it was like all those learning experiences of how you don't want to be as a leader. I'm always reminding myself of like the terrible leaders that I've worked with or the terrible bosses as I'm learning to be a leader myself. So started my real estate career in Southern Maine. And then at like a couple years in, I decided, you know what, I had grown up and went to school, went to college kind of within this like 45-minute to an hour radius of where I lived my whole life. And I decided while I'm young, like I want to live somewhere else. I want to experience something else other than this small town in Maine. So I made the move kind of like gradually to Boston. So I moved to the North Shore of Boston, joined a team there in 2017, and then had an opportunity to move to Boston shortly after that with that team in 2018. So that opportunity didn't last very long, as it was one of those situations of all the agents, all the admin, everybody just walking out on the Rainmaker, and they were like, "Do you want to stay?" And I was like, I don't know if it makes sense for me to say. But at the time when I moved to Boston, that team did a lot of like pay-per-click lead generation, sync, like those types of leads. And those can take a little bit to come to fruition. I didn't have a sphere of influence to rely on. I didn't know anybody here at all. And so the team leader was like, we're going to help you out, provide you with some leads, but you need to get some more immediate business as well. And I didn't know anybody. I don't love going to networking events. I don't love door knocking, but I'll do whatever it takes. But as I started talking to people, I realized that we're a really expensive market, but it wasn't necessarily an affordability issue that we were facing. I would be talking to people that were renting, and granted, this was 4 years ago, so rents have gone up significantly, but in 2008, they were like, or 2018, they were like, I'm spending $2,600 a month on rent, but I can't afford to buy, like I need 20% down or whatever. And I realized it wasn't that these people couldn't afford to buy, it was that there was a lack of education around what it took. That at the time was like a really great starter condo for $400,000 that you could buy with a $2,600 a month payment with like a very low down payment. So I found this lender, and he was pretty new to the game. He was like willing to do whatever. And we partnered up and started doing first time homebuyer events. And it's been a journey since then. That's how a lot of people know me.
Okay, so basically 2017, 2018, you picked up and you restarted your life, essentially your professional life. You didn't know anybody. So for anyone on the call who, is newer to an area, like that's okay. Like you can still do a lot of wonderful things when you're new to an area. Like you don't have to be there 30 years. And if you have been there 30 years, like that's awesome. Like use that But if you don't have that benefit, totally okay. Like Kimberlee is a good success story of picking up and starting over and finding success when you commit to a model. And we'll talk more about that. So okay, so 2018. Was that your first full year with that event, or was it 2017? When was your first full year?
So 2019 was my first full year. So I moved in August of 2018.
Okay, got it.
So we started doing the events the month before I moved. So in July, we had done a few prior to that, like in the spring, and we did them at my office. And for anybody, I know you guys are lucky in Texas to have pretty good weather. My future mother-in-law lives in Houston, so I'm pretty familiar with the weather there. You guys don't have like these horrific winters that we have in the Northeast. And we are like, the second it's nice out, everybody wants to be outside. We're like, we've been desperate for sunlight and warmth. And so my second event, the first one was like, I don't know, we had 3 or 4 people show up. This is at my office, like in the spring of 2018. My second event, no one showed up. And it was like the first beautiful day that we had. And so we were like, you know what? I don't blame them. Like, I would not want to go to a real estate office on a Saturday when it is like finally 65 degrees out. That probably sounds really cold for you guys, but that's nice for us in the spring. And so we kind of did some brainstorming and we're like, where is our target audience hanging out? Where would people want to go? Even if it's a really nice day, they can hang out. Where are they already going? And we came up with this idea to do them at a brewery. So we found a local brewery and they allowed us to use the space at kind of a weird hour of the day. So people are always asking me like, what time, like when's the best time? We literally picked like when we could get the cheapest time. There's no like magic time. It was just like, okay, we can have 11:30 to 1 on Sundays and that's going to be the most affordable. Done. Like we're doing it. And so
how much did it run? How much did it run? Just so we know.
We were spending a couple $100, mostly on just like, we gave everybody a free beer. So it was like a bar tab minimum. We found a brewery that was new too. So like we had to shop around and do a little bit of legwork. Some places wanted like $1,000 for 2 hours. And we were like, that's not in the budget.
Okay, so a couple $100 and you had your lender with you.
Yeah, my lender paid for it. So I paid for all of it was all Facebook ads driving people to these events because I didn't know anybody. So I paid for all the Facebook advertising and my lender paid for all of the event space stuff.
Got it. Okay, perfect. Thank you for sharing that.
So July was when we did our first brewery event. I officially moved in August. And then my first full year, to answer Adelina's question, was 2019.
Okay, so 2018, you had a few people show up. Sometimes you had no people show up. First of all, and I don't want to assume this for our people, but I would probably rightfully assume that if somebody had an event and then 3 or 4 people showed up, that might be the last event that they do. So what kept you going?
Yeah, so the first one we had in July was really well attended. I think we had like 30 or 35 people. So I was like so excited. We did it. We figured it out. And then we started doing them monthly. So that was my primary lead gen lever. I had this fantastic coach at the time who was like, track your numbers, like everything. We literally would measure how much money we would spend on advertising for each one, how many people would register, out of how many people register, how many attended, out of that, like how many decent leads were we getting. I would print out a sheet of paper with appointment slots on it. So I would say, like, I would end the event by saying like, great, the next step is if you're within like 12 to 18-ish months of making a purchase, we should set up a time to talk a little bit more about what that looks like for you. And it's going to be different for each person. Some people might be ready to go ahead and get started with a pre-approval. Others just might be kind of like thinking about what that looks like for saving money, like planning for the future. And so I had an appointment sheet that they could come and sign up for an appointment on the spot. So I would track how many appointments I would get. And I measured everything. And so I remember really clearly, I think it was like September or October, we had a few events under our belt by then and they'd been going really well. And then we had one that only 4 people showed up and I was so bummed. But my coach was like, so good about forcing me to track my numbers and remain consistent. And that event that only 4 people showed up to, every single person bought a house. And our average price point for not first time buyers is really a lot closer to $1 million. We're probably similar to Austin prices because you guys have seen a lot of growth. But my average first time buyer price point is like $600,000. So to get 4 transactions right out of that, that's not too bad, right? And we had other events where like we had 30 people show up and maybe only 1 or 2 of them became buyers. So it's not always about how many people attend, but how many people we convert, right?
I love that because we were just talking about it with our team on Monday. We think that we get paid for the activity, right? What we actually get paid for is conversion, which is why we've been pushing Valencia's class Converted so hard, because conversion is what gets us paid, right? But if you had 40 people and no one bought, but then you had 4 people and all of them bought, right? Like the 4 people won was like the better conversion rate, right? Like let's just be clear. Like one fed our ego, maybe one fed our bank account.
Yeah,
Like,
one of them bought like a $750,000 condo. So that was pretty great.
that'll work. Okay, so I know most people want to get into the nitty gritty of where you advertise and stuff like that. And I want to definitely talk about that. And that is a natural place for people to go. But where I want them to start is like, what was your mindset like when you were, because a lot of people want to start things. We have a lot of starters. Human nature is we want to start things. Following through month after month, because you did monthly, and then is that kind of like the cadence that you had?
Yeah. So as I really started to realize like this was a thing that was going to work, it doesn't necessarily matter how many people show up. Like I can stand in front of a room for an hour and a half with a lender and talk about the buying process, like pour into people. And I'm a big believer that when you provide people with enough value up front, we're not selling them, we're just providing them with value, and then they're going to raise their hand and say, hey, this was helpful for me, I want to know more, I want to get started. And so I am not a super high I am not an extrovert, even though I can talk to a room of people. If you ask me to talk to people all day long, one-on-one, like that is very draining for me. So I found that being able to scale my efforts and talk to a lot of people at once about something that I'm really passionate about was a really natural fit for my personality style and how I operate. And so I loved doing the events. I was seeing traction. And so I committed to just 1 a month at minimum on the schedule. So I finished out 2018 by having one every single month. And then at that point, I had a pretty good idea for the most part of like what I had to do for activities that would yield for results. So 2019 was my first full year. I ended up doing about 11.7 million in volume. And it was primarily from the events. That was like my main lead gen lever. I would get some referrals here and there. But events were like my number one activity focus. So 2019, I literally sat down at the beginning of the year and I said, I'm going to put every single one of these on my calendar and build my calendar around it. So we started out with 1 a month that year and did like towards the end of the year, we did like 2 or so. So I think we probably finished at about 18 events for the year. And then by the end of 2019, I definitely had enough data to say, okay, how many houses do I want to sell in 2020? I'm just going to work backwards and figure out how many events I need to have, because I knew how many people would attend, what my conversion rate was, and I could just figure out, look, okay, cool, I'm going to have this many events based on my goal.
Okay, so working backwards, so everybody heard that. About first year was 2018, and that was like 1 a month, and you ended up closing 11.7 million from it. And then sorry,
2019 was the first full year.
2019 was first full year. So you were treating this as a primary lead gen lever. Like somebody could treat an open house as a lead gen lever. You were treating events as a lead gen lever. Like you were not going to give up. Why did you choose buyers versus sellers?
Yeah, so I obviously I didn't know anybody. And when you don't know anybody in an area, there's a few ways to get sellers, right? You can call FSBOs, you can call expireds, you can door knock. We didn't really have a lot of expireds. We didn't really have a lot of like any of those things. We have had inventory issues in this area even pre-pandemic. Like we had about less than 2 months of inventory in 2019. So a lot of those opportunities were highly competitive. And then the other thing is I wanted to have a great career, not just a great year. And so I approached the buyers, specifically the first time buyers, with a mindset of playing the long game. So in our area, a lot of people will buy a starter condo and they'll live there for maybe like 2 years or so, hold on to it as a rental or sell it, and then buy that starter home in the suburbs or a little bit bigger of a condo. So there's kind of like a natural move up cadence that we have. And so I've now had a lot of those original buyers, especially in the last year or so, sell that condo, buy again. So I knew that if I got into a relationship with someone at the very beginning of their home buying journey, if I provided them with enough value and then stayed in relationship with them, consistently providing them value, that I was going to be their agent for life. And that one relationship was going to provide me like 6, 7, 8 transactions over their lifetime.
Okay, so you were looking at a lifetime goal, not like what can I do this year to make some money? I mean, obviously that's part of it, but that wasn't the determining factor for you.
Yeah,
All
exactly.
buyers become sellers.
I wanted to build a really quality database.
Okay, quality database. Okay, were you a solo agent during this time, or were you like, did you have like 10,000 people on your team? What did that look like? Just so we're clear, like think back to 2019.
Yep, I was a solo agent. My very first piece of leverage, because I just knew it was something I was terrible at, was to hire a contract to close transaction coordinator. So that was a solid year and a half with just the two of us. And then towards the middle to late 2020, I was like running around everywhere, like constantly, and realized that there was a lot of opportunities that I was missing because I was like home inspection, showing, like all over the place. And so I added a showing assistant at that point. So that was my first like real piece of consistent leverage that I was like dealing with this person on a day-to-day basis.
Okay, so for all purposes, essentially, you were a solo agent. You hired a transaction coordinator. End of like 2020, you're like, oh my God, I need help. Like, where do I get a partner in all of this? Did you join Place at any point of this, or were you not with Place at that time?
I was not with Place until the very beginning of this year, actually. So 2020, for all intents and purposes, I started to grow an actual team other than having a showing partner towards the end of that year, but the team for what it wasn't really producing other than myself. So just to kind of walk you guys through the numbers, 2019, first full year in Boston, closed 11.7 million. 2020, I closed 23 million. And this is primarily from doing those events. So I doubled my business. And then in 2021, started growing the team. We closed over, I think, just about 35 million. So we didn't double last year, but it is what it is. And then we joined Place at the very beginning of this year.
Got it. Okay, awesome. So your mindset was, I'm going to build a career out of this. Your mindset was, I'm new to the area, and the one opportunity that I'm seeing right now is nobody's doing any quality events. And number 3, you were like, buyers become sellers, and I'm here for the long term for this. When you wanted to give up, because you started all of this, and it sounds like, oh my gosh, like it must have just been so much fun for Kimberlee. Of course she did events. When you wanted to give up, why didn't you?
Because of the accountability I had in my life, and I didn't have a backup plan either. So I loved doing it. I had someone who like forced me to stick with it. It's really easy to get discouraged and like give up the second something doesn't go in an exciting direction, right? But when we commit to a system, it's like we really have to commit, right? Like we have to say, like, there's gonna be hard times. It's like a relationship, right? Any of you guys who are like in a relationship or married, like it's not every day that you're like super excited about your partner. Like you get into fights, you have speed bumps, road bumps, whatever, but you've made a commitment to that person, and you push through those hard times to have the really good times. So that was definitely a big piece of it, is like just committing to doing something. And I'm also like a big believer, like everything works in real estate, right? Like people ask me all the time, like, what's the advice you would give to a new agent? My advice is like, pick something that you really enjoy doing and just commit to being the best at it. So no one was really doing buyer seminars at a high level. And so I said, I'm going to set out to be the best out there at it. And I've gotten a lot of recognition for it. Like I'm very grateful for that. But like, if you love door knocking, commit to just like being the best door knocker out there. And that mastery is going to pay off after some time.
Yeah, I love what you said. Do what you love doing, do enough of it, commit to mastery, and have a long-term mindset, right? Like anything will work. You got to actually do it, right? Yeah. Okay, so let's get into the mechanics of it. So let's talk about what kind of prep. Well, first of all, before we talk prep, how many hours are you committing to this on a monthly, weekly basis? Like, let's talk 2019, for example, because that was your first like full year, or 2020, or whenever you want to talk about it. How much time goes into it, and then what does prep and planning look like?
Yeah, so the initial hours was quite a bit. I think I probably spent eight or so hours just like putting together the materials. So we don't do a PowerPoint. I think it's very easy to watch a PowerPoint and just glaze over. Like it's boring. You lose people, right? So what we did was we actually sat down and any of you guys can do this. They're in KW Connect. Is that Connect is the education
Yes.
one? Yeah. Okay. In KW Connect, there is a PowerPoint called My First Home. It's like a guideline for a first time homebuyer seminar. So we use that as like our outline essentially. And then we went and just like created all the different things that were specific to our market, different things that we wanted to talk about. And I met with my lender. We spent some time going through this and building out like a PDF booklet. So what we would do for the event is print out the booklet. We do them a lot more virtually now. So we just email out a PDF of it ahead of time. And I thought like when we started doing them virtually that no one was going to care. I've had so many clients that were like, I printed it out and took notes while you talked. So they do care. But I figured like if we had something that they had to stay engaged with as we went along, and all of our information is on that, right? So if someone's taking notes about what do I need for down payment, what is my credit score need to be, or whatever the different things are, they might not be ready to buy today, right? But they might say like a year from now, oh yeah, like well, I took a class on that. Like, let me go back and look at my notes, and all of our information is there, right? So instead of them just taking it in a random notebook that they might shove in a drawer, there's a better chance of them seeing us and remembering us, even if we did a not great job with following up with someone, if they slipped through the cracks. So they had like different things. It was like, what's the minimum credit score to buy? And there would be a fill in the blank. And so that was part of the prep, like printing out the booklets. I just got like a little cover thing from Staples, and I would have enough booklets for everybody, put them at a seat with a pen and everything. So they just showed up and like everything was there ready for them. In terms of the actual event, it was really like an hour and a half or so. And then we would stay and answer questions afterwards. So maybe like 2 hours start to finish with setup and cleanup. And then you just have your regular follow-up, which fell under my lead gen time during the week.
What did follow-up look like? That was my next question. What does follow-up look like?
Yeah, so afterwards, we're reaching out to everybody and thanking them, first of all, for coming to the event if they didn't set an appointment with us at that time. And then we're just saying, hey, would you like to get set up on a preliminary home search? And they're like, what's that? What does that entail? Oh, that's a great question. Do you have an idea of what your budget might be? What areas of interest? So it just really was like a question to get the conversation flowing. Oh, how soon are you hoping to buy? Like, have you gotten pre-approved? And then kind of following up based on next steps from there, right? Like if somebody is, oh, well, I'm not looking to do anything for another 2 years. Oh, no problem. Let me go ahead and get you set up on some listing alerts and a market report for the areas that you're interested in. Then you can just keep an eye on what's going on in the market. We do this for a lot of our buyers so that by the time they are ready to buy, they're now one of the most educated buyers out there because they've been seeing what's going on. And then as you get closer to timeline, I'll just check back in with you and see what we can help with. So the follow-up is kind of on an individual basis, but we're really just getting people onto a market report and a listing alert. And if we don't hear from them, we're still doing that stuff because we've converted a lot of people that like ghosted us for the longest time. I can't tell you how many people I would send them 20 emails, 20 text messages. And then one day they're like, okay, we're ready to buy a house. Like, will you talk to us?
Yeah, I mean, that's real life, right? Like that is just like if you feel like if you're taking it personally that they're ghosting you, please don't, right? Like, I mean, they have life outside of this. And then when they're ready, they want you to be ready. Like at that point, they want you to be ready, right? So I love that. I love that. Okay, so about 8 hours of prep time. Was that for your very first one, or is
Yeah,
that
that was for the very first one. And then each time after that, it was like 30 minutes or so, just putting booklets together, printing stuff out.
Okay, so just like the bulk of the work was really just putting your prep material, and then after that, it's just updating things, right? And specifically, you're using the outline from My First Home, and you're adding in specifics to your market. And some of the key things would be credit, it would be loan products. Is that the sort of thing that what would be specific to your market? What might those things look like?
Yeah. So, in terms of someone that's thinking of doing this, like, what are the things that when you're talking to someone who doesn't own a home, what are the things that you're finding are the biggest misconceptions, right? We would hear a lot of 20% down payment. We actually have a program in Massachusetts where if you're a first time home buyer and you have a certain income limit, or if you're buying in a certain area that's like a more developing area, you can get a 0% down loan. So, what are the objections you're facing, right? Oh, I don't have enough money. Oh, well, guess what? There's a program for that. Oh, hey, I don't think my credit is good enough. Oh, hey, actually, your credit really only needs to be like 620. It's funny. My fiance, like we're going through the buying process right now, and this is his first time buying, and I've owned like 5 houses by now. And he's like, he has really good credit, and he's like, I don't think they're going to qualify me. And I was like, what do you mean? Like, so it's just someone could have amazing credit and just think that like they won't qualify. So what are all the things that buyers are scared about, they're not sure about, or whatever? And don't overcomplicate it either. I've heard people like they bring in their title person, their attorney, they bring in a home inspector, all these different parts of the transaction, and it's just too much for a buyer. They want to know, how much money do I need? Like, what do I need to do to get started? And how does the process go? Like, so keep it simple. It's just a lender and myself. And we're talking about like the market, the benefits of buying, and then financing. Like goes into financing? What are they looking at? What do you need to have for a down payment? What are the costs involved? And what are different loan programs available to a buyer?
Are you getting into like, then showings happen, then offers happen, or you're not really getting into that? You're just really sticking to here's how you get to first base, essentially.
We're really 90% of our time is focused on like, here's how you get to first base. But then we do talk about like, how does the transaction go? We spend maybe 2 minutes talking about that. But I'm constantly like, during the event, I'm like soft closing people. So we like to get people that are within 12 months of buying into buyer agency agreements with our team. So we don't work with a single buyer that won't sign a buyer agency agreement. But I like to get people in my world as early as possible that it makes sense, because that's pipeline business for me. And I've had so many people that told me, well, I have a lease, so I'm not buying until next year. And then you get them going, you get them set up on listing alerts, and something pops up that they love, and no longer do they care about breaking their lease. So I'm setting the expectation during the whole, like constantly during the event, that, hey, if you're in like within 12 to 18 months of buying, it's better to get started earlier in the process. A few reasons: you might have pretty good credit, but our lenders might be able to work with you to help you get that credit to a great level. Maybe you have a few things like different debts that you need to pay down in that time, so that you can really be in a good position by the time you are ready to buy. The other thing we do is we'll sit down and talk about what type of property are you looking for, and we'll get you set up on listing alerts. You're going to start seeing those come in. You may not be ready to actually go out and start looking at properties, but what is going to happen is you're going to see those properties coming on the market. You're going to see what things are listing for and selling for in the areas that you're looking in. You might want to make some adjustments to the areas as well. And by the time you are ready to buy, you're now going to be one of the most educated buyers out there. So that's the way that I like spin it. And what I'm really doing is just building up a pipeline of future business for myself. And there's been many times where someone told me, oh, I have a lease, like I'm not going to buy until next year. And then they see something and they're like, hey, we're really interested in this. Like, can we set up a showing? And I'm like, oh, well, has your timeline changed? Like you said, you weren't going to be looking until next year. Yeah, well, we love this house so much, we'd be willing to break our lease for it. Oh, okay. Like, so often, like people say buyers are liars, and I don't think that's very fair. I think people just don't know what they want until they really start the process.
Yeah, people, when they see something they want, it's much easier to get from point A to point B, as opposed to, it's kind of like, if you are an individual that you may not know your big why, it's harder for you to move forward, right? But the second that you find what like you want to work towards, how easy does that become, right? Like every follow-up call is no longer difficult, right? Everything is so much easier when you know where you're going, right? And when they see that perfect house, everything becomes easy for them. You mentioned buyer agency agreements, and one thing that came up in Gary's mastermind this week was the Department of Justice case, the DOJ case. Around commissions, and it's a big deal right now, you guys, if you're not following that. Lack of buyer agency agreements is what created this. 90% of our industry does not use buyer agency agreements. I know some people on our call do not use buyer agency agreements until they get them under contract. And it's not the majority of the people on this call, but I just want to caution you that that is what has created this major fuck up for our industry right now. And here's the reason why. When you don't use a buyer agency agreement, there's no evidence that anything was explained to them. That is the issue. And that is what got us to the DOJ. When there is nothing in writing, right? You would never do that with a listing, and we do it all the time with buyers. And the DOJ said, since nothing is in writing, then how do we know that anything was ever explained? Therefore, buyers don't know. It is not common knowledge, right? Around commissions, around like fiduciary duties, et cetera. So I just wanted to bring that up because it is a big deal, and they're starting to, Gary just had to, he's one of the star people that they had to like, it just sucks because like, we are with the largest company, but I just wanted to bring that up because buyer agency agreements do protect you. But man, they protect our industry as well. We would never work with sellers without an agreement. We do it all the time with buyers. At the end of the day, professional people and people that are serious will absolutely work with the buyer agency agreement. So that's just my quick little pedestal.
Yeah,
You want to share on that?
100% non-negotiable requirement on our team that they have to I will sometimes allow someone to do like one showing with someone, and then they have to have a consultation. They absolutely, we do not work with anybody that will not sign a buyer agency agreement. And our presentation, we're clearly explaining the benefit of it. So it like the close of our buyer consultation is such a like, people will say, well, why wouldn't I want that? And that's what we want, right? Like we want it to be so obvious what the value is that they're like, yeah, right. Like who says no to this? And we have sometimes had people say no. And those are the people that are also saying, well, I want the agents. I want all these different agents working for me, and whoever brings me the deal, that's who I'm going to go with. And that we don't want those type of people. We want people that are really committed to the relationship because we're working super hard for them. And we expect that they're going to give a certain amount of loyalty. With our agreements, we also have a cancellation agreement that basically says like, if at any time you're not happy with the service that we're providing and we're not living up to that 5-star expectation, you can cancel this agreement. Like that's fine. But we want them to be committed to us and saying yes from the start. And that also for our team, that triggers a bunch of processes. So we deliver a 5-star promise at the consultation. Like we're going to promise to deliver this. I don't know, you guys probably all know the promise script, but we're also, they have to submit the paperwork. So anything that someone signs, they're getting an intro email from our admin team afterwards with signed copies of the paperwork. And then the admin team is also saying, hey, remember, this is our promise to you. You're going to send us a referral. So it's actually helped really build out our referral process as well. And last year, referrals from clients were 30% of our business.
Referrals from clients were 30% of your business. Wow. Okay. Tracy asked, do you usually use the place loyalty agreement first before the longer official buyer rep, or do you work through that at all, or how does that look like?
We don't. So I had a very thorough buyer consultation process before we join Place. And so we just take them through the whole process and say, like, do you want to be a client or just a customer? And if they say customer, we're not really going to work with them. We're going to set them up on a listing alert and maybe they're going to change their mind just through brevity. But 99.9% of people say they want to be a client. So we send them all of the official mass buyer agency agreement paperwork.
Okay, do you want to be a client or do you want to be a customer? Or just a customer? Gosh, boy, that'll do it.
Yeah, and that's the close on our presentation, because the whole presentation takes about 45 minutes and we're walking them through, like, here's the value, here's what it means to be a client versus a customer. Anybody that wants to see my consultation, I actually have a recording of it, so just email me. And then it's like, here's the value of our team. This is what we're going to do. We're looking for off-market properties. Like, we're showing to them through that time how hard we're working for them. And then we're also talking about, like, our cancellation guarantee, all the different things that we have as a value proposition. And then at the end, it's like, do you want this or do you just want to be some regular Joe, essentially? And everybody's like, well, yeah, obviously I want all that stuff. That sounds awesome.
Got it. And how long are your buyer reps for?
It depends on their timeline. So if someone's like buying the next 6 months, I might do like 6 months. A lot of times it's 12 months, depending on their timeline. Because again, we will sign people to buyer agency agreement that might be 12 months out in the process, right? So I might say, like, hey, I know you're like looking in 9 months from now or whatever. I'm just going to make this for like 12 months so that if it takes you a little bit longer, we don't have to redo the paperwork. We rarely, like, if they go beyond that timeline, we're rarely like redoing it, because at that point they're super committed to us anyways, or they might not be a serious buyer.
What would you say are the reasons people don't do events?
Don't do events?
They do not.
That's a good question. I don't think anybody's ever asked me that. Maybe they don't take the time.
Well, yeah, we'll be very inspired by this, and then very few will do it. So I'm always wondering, like, what do you think stops people from doing it? Is it a commitment? Is
I
it?
think it's the commitment. I know, actually, you and I have had conversations about other lead gen members that we were super excited about. And like, I literally have not committed to doing it on my calendar because other things get in the way. And I was just thinking about that. I'm like, man, I told her I was going to do this. I need to start working on that thing. But it really comes down to that. It's like, we get so excited about an idea and then it's time to actually put it together. And we're like, oh, like, I have this thing going on, or I have this client. Like, the immediate things and like the more urgent things can often trump the like longer term building things. So it's like working in your business versus working on your business.
I hear that. So let's say if somebody is, like, further out than, a typical 3 month or something like that, they're further out, 6, 12 months, whatever. Other than your buyer rep and potentially, like market reports and listing alerts, are there any other touches? Are there any other value props between either from lead to sign client or sign client to contract? Any of those that you feel like, man, I think we do this pretty well?
So they're just getting into our database at that point, and we're treating them like the people that are super special in our database. So we actually do quarterly giveaways as a team. It's like text in to get this thing. We've done different things from like a Peloton to gift cards to like Crate and Barrel or Home Depot. We did a like really fancy Dyson vacuum last quarter, and everybody gets so excited about these giveaways. So we're just putting them onto those touch programs. So they're still hearing from us and they're getting like the experience of being one of our clients. And that's also another opportunity for us to ask for referrals, because one of the things we do during the giveaways is like, you can get extra entries to get a referral. So we've even had people that sent us referrals before they even transacted. And they're like, they just think we're amazing at that point. And they like haven't even bought a house with us. And they will tell their friend like, oh, you have to work with this agent. They're so good. They're so awesome. And it's funny because they're not even speaking from the experience of going through the transaction with us.
And is that when you get the word out about your giveaways, is it just an email that you send them? How do you get the word out so people get excited? Because I think it's an exciting thing if people like actually do it.
We have a lot of touches involved. And I think the hardest thing that I found now is like holding people accountable on the team to also doing those same touches. Like there's a plan for each giveaway. It's like they have to text them at this point ahead of time, letting them know to like that this giveaway is coming up. We send out emails to the database. They have to call everybody that is in their sphere and past clients and current clients at that point, like during the giveaway time. So there's like, they're probably hearing from us like 5 or 6 times during the giveaway time, not including social media touches. And then they're hearing from us after the giveaway as well. So that's kind of built into our 36 touch for the year as well.
Got it. Got it. Do you work with the same lender every time, or do you invite different lenders to speak and sponsor? What has that look like?
For the event, it's the same lender. We just have a really good rapport that we built, like a really, really good energy. And we send him so much business that he sends us so much business in return. So I find it's just easiest to stick with the same person. But if that person doesn't work out, do it with another person. I don't think there's like a right or wrong way to do it. It just
You're looking to
depends.
find the right partner for this. This is
Exactly. It's a true
partnership.
partnership, and you want somebody that's going to be committed to doing it in the long haul too.
Got it. Got it. Awesome. And then one of the questions that I just got, do you do closing gifts? I mean, you've put a lot of effort into all of this. You do closing gifts. What does that look like if you do?
We don't. Gifts are my lowest love language, so I've never done closing gifts. We get tons of referrals. We get like I'm kind of the mindset that the gift is their home, and then they're also just coming into our world and like constantly getting invited to client events, like invited to all these different things. So I don't do client closing gifts, but I don't think that's a right or wrong thing. Everybody runs their business differently.
Yeah, absolutely. And good questions. Really great questions from everybody in the audience this morning. Most of them were from you guys. That was really great. Laura is asking, do you have a recorded or a step-by-step manual on how you handle events? Have you developed that, or is it just off the cuff every time?
I do. The only thing that's not current on it is how we're doing the ads, which they used to go to Eventbrite, and now they're actually, the Facebook ads are going right into Brivity. So if someone wants to reach out to me, I'm willing to share all of that stuff. And then if you want to have the ads set up, Amy Garish, I think her email is just amyg@brivity.com. She can do them.
Awesome. And obviously this has morphed into bigger than when you started. So I'm going to wrap with that. Initially you were doing it at a brewery and it was a couple $100. Has that changed? Has that part changed?
We don't do them at the brewery anymore. So we couldn't for a long time with COVID. And because my whole year in 2020 was built around like doing these events, I had to I hate the word pivot now, but I had to pivot to doing them virtually. And we found that it was the same results. We were still getting the same amount of conversion. It was a lot less time, a lot less money. So like for me, it was a lot easier for me to just like 5 minutes before jump on a Zoom call instead of like leave my house, drive to the brewery, set everything up. We have tried going back to doing them in person, but so much has changed here. It's like really expensive for us to do them at a brewery because they want to charge us more, all these different things. So we're just sticking to virtual for the time now.
Wow. So like literally for the last couple of years, you've just been solidly virtual and you're getting these kind of results?
Yeah. Since March of 2020.
Okay, so you are essentially sending a digital PDF packet for them to print out so they can take notes while you and your lender are presenting. Like, am I understanding how simple this is? I just want to make sure that I am not missing it.
Exactly. And so I like when people ask me about getting started now, I tell them like, don't do it at a brewery. If you want to over time and like eventually you love doing it, you're going to commit to it. Like, yeah, bring it in person, but start in a more affordable way. Do it on Zoom. It's going to be a lot cheaper. Test it out, figure out if you like doing it, and then you can look into doing it in person.
Okay, and then marketing and advertising, what did it start looking, what was it like, early on? Like how much were you spending and where? And what does it look like today now that you've scaled it?
So I was spending about like $300 per event on Facebook ads. So it was all through just Facebook ads. They would get directed to Eventbrite and they would sign up on Eventbrite. Now, I don't know what it is per event because we get a bill per month, but it's kind of around the same. We're just doing them a lot more frequently, and they're just getting they sign up right on Facebook and it goes right into Brivity. So we've built out a bunch of auto plans for like pre-event with touches, like thanks for registering. We're getting a lot more aggressive. I think that the effectiveness of text messages have changed a lot over the last 4 years. We used to get a lot of people responding to text messages, but like, think of it, how many text messages do you get now that are like, reminder for your hair appointment, like reminder, you have your Verizon payment coming up. And that wasn't like that like 4 years ago. So we have added a lot more calls into our like pre and post event as well, because that's just going to be the most effective. So they get put on an auto plan right when they register. And then after the event, depending on if they attended or not, they get a specific auto plan. We're also like, everybody that doesn't attend, we're still keeping them in our world. We're directing them to future events. We're reaching out to see if we can set up a one-on-one consultation with them. We have a lot of buyers that we've converted that actually never even attended our event.
Wow. Okay. To wrap it up, is there any advice that you feel like, gosh, I wish I would have known this, or I've seen other people try this and this is why they're not getting perhaps the results that we've been able to have? Because Boston is like not that special. I mean, it's great, I'm sure, and I'm sure you're special too, but I don't know that you're that special. Like, what is it?
Oh, thank you.
I mean,
like leaving me, taking my ego down.
You are incredibly.
I'm kidding.
Yeah,
I think
incredible person.
People overcomplicate it and then they don't give it enough time. So the way that our events are run today are not the same as they were run in 2018. Like, I didn't even ask people for their phone numbers for the first like 6 months because I was terrified that they weren't going to register if they had to give me their phone numbers. Like, that is the silliest thing, but it's an evolving thing. It's like a living, breathing thing. You're going to evolve the system over time. Just commit to getting started. It does not have to be perfect. I think perfection is a reason that a lot of people don't get started, because they want it all to be perfect before they do it. Just do it, and it will evolve over time, but commit to doing it long enough that you can actually see those results. And when you say long enough, what do you actually mean? Just so that we're clearer. I would like do 6 events before you give up on it. It's also helpful to have future events scheduled. So life happens, right? People will say, oh, well, I got called into work, or like I had an emergency come up. Cool. We have an event coming up next week at this date. Do you want me to go ahead and register you for it? But if you don't have those future dates planned out, it's that like, okay, what's cool? Do you want to talk about buying? Like, if they're really, really early in the process, that's not going to interest them. I have people from 2018 events just buying houses now. So it's truly a pipeline that you're building. Well, I like that it's immediate business and pipeline. Like, right, yeah. Like it's really the best of both worlds. Yeah, I had one event where a girl showed up and we had the event on Sunday. She got pre-approved that coming week. Her and I met on Saturday. So 7 days later, she saw a property at an open house on Sunday, and then she was under agreement on Monday. So it was like a 9-day process for her. That'll work. You know what this reminds me of, guys? Gosh, this sounds like a lot like an open house that you didn't have to get out of your car and put signs up, and they're probably not represented by anybody. They're raising their hand, or they're not spending, time on Zoom with you. So that's awesome, Kimberlee. Thanks for opening up our eyes to that, especially in the Texas heat. If you guys ever get hot putting out signs, there's another route for you. So you're doing them Saturdays or Sundays, just so we all different days of the week. So we do them on Sundays. We're now doing them like Tuesday evenings, Wednesday evening, just whatever works for our schedule, because there is no perfect time. Somebody's always going to have a conflict. Obviously, if you're looking for like young professionals, don't do it at like 10 o'clock on a weekday, right? Like they're going to be working. But I think really weekends, any evening, maybe not Friday nights, but for the most part, there's no perfect time or day to do it.
Excellent. Well, you can pop your contact information in chat just so we
Okay.
have your cell phone, your email, anything. And then she serves the Boston area. You guys, we know we have a lot of people moving in and out of Texas. Kimberlee would love to serve you guys in her area, like big time. And if anyone, whoever decides to do this, I'd love to keep track of your results and how you're doing and how it looks like it here in Texas. That would be just phenomenal. Thanks so much, Kimberlee. Thank you.
Thank you so much for having me. Reach out with any questions at all. I have auto plans I can share. I have event guide, like everything I'm happy to share. Because most people just never do anything with it. So I'm not really worried about like anybody like copying me. But yeah, I like if you decide to commit to this, let me know how it goes. I'm always happy to help and be a resource.
You're incredible. Thank you so much, Kimberlee. We'll see you later. Thanks,
Bye, guys.
guys. Have a good week.